ready to begin?
What page were those announcements on?
Okay, we're on. So, welcome everyone to the Wenham Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. We are a little bit delayed. We had actually two posted and legal executive sessions that occurred before this open session, which have been adjourned, and so we are now in open session. We have a few changes to the substance or the organization of our meetings, but I believe Trudy Reed, I know Trudy Reed is here and would like to say a few words, so please. Thank you, Trudy, for coming up.
Good evening. I have to read because I want to make sure I don't leave anyone out.
Yeah, good luck with that.
So on behalf of Wenham's 375th Anniversary Committee, I would like to thank everyone who came out to the parade and to attend our Community Day this past Saturday. The attendance exceeded our expectations. The event took months to plan and could not have happened without guidance of Diane Bucco, who oversaw the entire day, working with Althea Cranton, who executed the parade, and Krista Noon from the museum, who took charge of the Community Day events at Pingree Park. There were many others who got involved as a subcommittee and as the entire committee, but without those three, I don't think the day would have been as successful. I'd also like to thank the support of the four of you, but Jack left.
He was making sure the audio was working.
So I'd like to thank I'd like to thank the four of you for your support, and also through the town we had the support of Jackie Bresnahan and the intern Lauren Meyerson, and with their backup support to the committee was outstanding. Still to come, we're not through. We have a mock town meeting at the First Church in Wenham that we're going to be doing in December, and we will be working on a booklet over the next few months to commemorate the entire year that we have gone through.
That'd be great.
I have to give a little plug. There are still T-shirts, sweatshirts, and other merchandise still available.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
Are they tie-dyed, pre-tie-dyed?
They are not tie-dyed. No, I don't think we have any of those. And they would make great care packages for your college students, faraway family members, and holiday gifts. And I'd just like to say, since moving to Wenham in 1993, I've considered it home for many years, and Saturday made me extra proud to be living in a great community. So thank you, and thank you to the committee. If I could recognize them.
Please.
Harriet Davis, Kirsten Alexander, Althea Cranton, Diane Lang, Bob Hicks, Gary Cheeseman, and Diane Bucco.
Thank you.
Am I missing anyone that's here? No. We had a couple of who came in last minute to help us with a few things, Dorothy Gowdy and Carrie Jesma, who did the kids' activities on Saturday.
It's fantastic success. How many people would you estimate actually lined the streets?
Well, at some point the police indicated 450 to 500 people overall. How they came to that, I have no idea, but from the park down to the corner where 1A turns going into Wenham, it was completely lined. That was as far as I could see.
It was amazing.
It was truly, truly an amazing event. I don't even think I could thank everyone enough. I can't not even imagine how much work went into the logistics of just making it all happen, let alone making it happen seemingly flawlessly. I'm sure you had a few things behind the scenes. I've had people walk up to me on the street in the last few days and tell me how wonderful it was. I've had a few people from out of town ask me if we do this every year.
No.
Oh, every Saturday.
And I said, on behalf of the committee, I think I would say no to that. But really, truly, thank you to everyone who really worked so hard. It was an amazing
I understand in different neighborhoods there are house parties going on.
Yes.
That there are drinks, cocktails being served, and I missed all that.
Groups of people were gathered to watch the parade together, neighborhood groups. I couldn't have been prouder to be part of the town myself. So thank you to everyone, and if there's anyone who's not here that.
I think there were a few times, I know at least myself, I don't know about anybody else, we threatened to quit throughout the year, but I'm glad I hung in there, and it was a very successful day.
It was
Thank you.
And it was a great weather.
Thanks.
So
I have two comments, Trudy. One is specific to your group, and that is you guys worked very hard, and you seem to be very successful at providing something for everyone. I don't care whether they were 5 years old, 3 years old, like my granddaughter.
Definitely 3.
Or, 95. Oh, I'm sorry, almost 100. Betty Cheeseman, who's almost 100, was toe-tapping when that band came on at the end of the afternoon. So it was just just so wonderful. And then to follow up behind this was the Al Dodge Memorial dedication on Sunday. And many of the same people were there as well. And that went off so well. And I want to put a shout out to Bill Melville, because he showed up with all of his equipment and recorded the whole thing. So for those who weren't able to make that dedication, it's online already. And by the time I was done, and I'm repeating this from Sunday, I got to tell you, this was such a nostalgic weekend. Norman Rockwell has nothing in the town of Wenham.
I think the parade was recorded, so I'm hoping that we can get that onto the cable access.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
And the folks on Sunday at the Dodge Memorial actually thanked and credited the 375th Committee as well for sort of wrapping it up as part of our celebratory weekend. So there was some recognition even on Sunday of the everything that happened on Saturday. So.
Well, I really appreciate your support.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
See you next year.
Yep.
Maybe not? Okay.
Town meeting?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, true.
For the
Okay.
400th.
So that's that. I think we also have Win Dodge is here tonight and would like to say a few words.
What you know what happened on the weekend?
Sort of on the weekend theme. It was quite a weekend. Thank you for coming.
Before I start, I can report that I also participated in the parade as one of the veterans, and I can attest to the fact that no one was in step. I'm here to really thank the board for your help and your support of establishing the Al Dodge Memorial at Iron Rail. And you know, it's about 2 years in the making. It took a long time, but it got designed and installed with your support, and we wound up with a good day. You were there, Catherine and John, and would I just say a couple of comments and then get to the point. The memorial really is a partnership between Boy Scout Troop 28, the Iron Rail Commission, and the town of Wenham. And so all aspects of Al Dodge's life are really spread through those three agencies. So they all work together, and just to name the people, Ron Gauthier, who was former Scoutmaster of Troop 28, was the MC, and other scouting people, Cynthia Purdy is the troop chair, and Matt Bailey, the Scoutmaster. And if you were there, you saw all those kids in uniform, and they were looking sharp, and they were hauling all the elderly people up and down the hill. They did a good job.
Gonna need some
Nobody
steps
died.
there, I think, or something.
And
they eat a lot of food, too.
Overall coordinator for the last 2 years was a man named Blake Denman, who maybe you don't know, but he's a Gordon College graduate and an Eagle Scout, and so he was asked to be the point person on preparation of that. Win Mowry, landscape planners and our tree warden, his company did the landscaping there. If you haven't seen it and you want to go over there, took what was a hillside and made it into a beautiful memorial garden circle thing where the 4 plaques are stationed around it. Gorgeous job. I'll get back to Win in a moment. And finally, not last but not least, John Clemenzi. What many of you don't know is John's not only, of course, a selectman, but he is also an Eagle Scout advisor, been very involved in scouting for many, many years. So is really the key person when a boy gets to the point where they're getting to the Eagle rank. John is, so that's the group that really put this together. And as I say, it took them 2 years. There are 4 plaques there. When you go to look at it, that depict Al Dodge's life and service to the town. And one of them is, the first one is a man of many trees, which I'll get back to, and then his participation as well, a man of many trees about being tree warden and so forth. And then his participation and hand in getting the Iron Wheel property purchased by the town many years ago. John's presentation of his life and as general legacy of leadership in town, from school committee to whatever. There's another plaque, that's a third plaque. And finally, he as Al as an Eagle Scout. He was the first Eagle Scout in Wenham, one of the first in the whole country in 1929.
9?
Thank you. And so those are portrayed on 4 different plaques there. I should mention that those plaques were temporary at the time of the ceremony because we didn't have all of the plaques from the manufacturer, but they probably within a week or so they'll be big heavy metal thing. So with that, the Dodge family, of course, is very appreciative of all the work that's been done by many people, and thinking about the tree section of it, a man of many trees, and Dad is a tree warden, this seems to be a fitting time for the family to talk about helping the town with its new program of tree planting. I mean, we've been doing tree cutting for years, and the history of this as a tree warden, his 50 years as tree warden, has been never enough money for planting trees, almost never. And only the Finance Committee and the Selectmen would only come up with enough money to cut down the trees that had to be cut because it's sort of an emergency thing. So since he retired, well, when he was tree warden and going back, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now, he relied on donations from private citizens to really do the bulk of the tree planting, and he wound up doing in his career something hundreds of trees around town. Sure. So what we're trying to do now is proposing to come back to that program. The board has in its conversation said that we need to do more tree planting. There has some money set aside, but the Dodge family feels very strongly to continue his legacy as what he did as tree warden and to plant trees in town. We are suggesting a new fund be established, and we're going to call it the Al Dodge Memorial Tree Planting Fund. And I think you all have a letter to this effect in your packet here with the whole thing. I won't go through the whole thing, but basically we want to fund put seed money into the fund, really, and the fund will serve as, one, a restricted fund, restricted gift account, so it doesn't get siphoned off by any number of other people who want to cut down some tree. This is strictly for tree planting, and that's the fund will say that, restricted gift account. Secondly, we want to have the fund as a demonstration to the public that, once again, we're going out to those people who are interested and want a tree and maybe want to contribute to it, they can add to the fund too. We don't want the fund to be to operate in lieu of any town appropriations. And this is similar to what happens with the education fund, sure. If you're familiar with that. It has to be over and above the normal, whatever normal is, appropriation from the town meeting to planting of trees. And what normally happens, of course, is the Finance Committee proposes that we're going to get so much money, trees are coming down, we got to cut all the trees down. So what we want to do is have a portion of the allocation to the tree warden each year designated right from the get-go in a separate line, if we can, for just tree planting. But the Dodge Family Fund will be in addition to that. So hopefully we'll be able to catch up on a lot of the tree planting that's really in arrears that we can do. So you have a letter indicating that we are going to begin with a contribution of $5,000 to this fund, and we're hoping that that will attract others to join in that. Sure. And you know, get a few trees planted.
Nice.
So,
Thank you very
Question.
much.
The formally accept this as a
I
gift.
think we do. I think there's some, probably some accounting, some paperwork that has to be done. I think Wynn is here to have us express our desire for all of those things to be done. Because you haven't actually made the contribution yet, and we'll have to formally accept it. But this is a good introduction of what I'm understanding of what you'd like to do. We need to flesh out some of the legal parts of it, make sure the money goes where it's supposed to and gets spent for what it's supposed to.
No, the letter is pretty self-explanatory, Lori. He needs to sign it, too.
Well, again, it's a,
I asked Catherine if I should
He
sign
did,
it today
and-
earlier, and I was told it wasn't necessary,
well,
Jack.
no, I didn't say it wasn't
You
necessary.
agree it is, right? though?
What I said was,
What did you
let's
say?
get all the Ts crossed and the Is dotted, and then we'll have a letter that's signed.
I'm a finance guy, he knows.
Well, plus, we don't have that check yet, so,
It's in the mail.
No, I think, I think
No,
we're all good.
not in the
I think
mail,
this
but it-
came to me just this morning. We asked, Wynn was very kind to come and introduce the program. Certainly, we need to memorialize it a little bit more, but
The letter's pretty self-explanatory,
it's,
so.
it's great. It's
I'll
great.
send
And
you a signed letter, Jack.
I think this will inspire people to donate money specifically for tree planting that were not necessarily inspired to do that before because they know there's a fund. And I think there's already been some ideas floated around of ways that we can.
And I did have a chance to
Yes.
talk to Win Mullery today about, what we're trying to do. He has a copy of the letter, and so I think he's in sync with what the process is.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay.
So Peter will.
I'll
Great.
talk to the accountant,
Thank
I'll
you.
talk to Win.
Thank you very much, Wynn, and thank
Thank
you
you
to the
so
Dodge
much.
family. Okay, anyone else here, public input? Certainly. Something not on the agenda? Yes? Hope so.
Good evening. My name is Keith Rice. I live at 128 Haverhill Road, Topsfield, and I'm here as a 30-year employee of the gas company. I've worked in these towns for the great majority of all of those years, and I'm here representing Local 12012-4, the United Steelworkers, and I'm one of over 1,200 locked-out gas workers at National Grid. I know we've been here in the past, and I thought I'd update you. I'm sure you may be getting updates from National Grid, the company. I thought you'd like to hear maybe another point of view. During the last 3 months, we've witnessed several safety infractions and violations by the replacement workers who have stepped in with management alongside to attempt to replace the locked-out workers. We would like to discuss with the board, with any and all members of the board, to discuss these incidents at some point in time. I'll be very brief, but given the history of this past March in your town on Cherry Street, we all should know and we must respect the product we deal with and do everything we can to deliver it safely. I'll leave my contact information with you folks, and you can certainly reach out to me. It can be reached most any time. And if you can recommend any good time to reach you individually, or I certainly appreciate that information. When's the best time to contact you? But as I say, being brief, that's where we're at.
Well, I have a question for you. And that, so
Certainly.
there's an article in, was it today's Globe or yesterday's Globe? A quite lengthy article about the management impasse you have with National Grid. Did you?
Yes.
You read that, right?
Yes, this morning, I believe there was one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Was there anything in there was inaccurate as far as you're concerned?
Inaccurate?
Yeah.
Not that comes to mind. I think it was pretty close to what's going on.
Okay, because they gave both sides of it. And they gave the safety issues, which they talked about a lot, and they
Yep.
gave what the unions were asking for, which management disagreed with.
Yep.
Okay. I thought it was a very good article.
Thank you. Yeah, I did as well.
So I'm going to suggest that any communications that you would like to have or information, that you go through Peter, give him your contact information.
Okay.
We don't operate as individuals, we only operate as a board.
Okay.
So if there's something that,
Bring
some
it to
information, you can
Peter's
give to
attention.
Peter, he'll bring it to our attention. If we need to, we can deliberate it at another meeting.
Okay.
But that would be the
That's great.
efficient and legal way to get something to happen. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Sure.
Thank you. Good luck.
So very briefly, before we actually start the meeting, for our vast viewing audience, we have changed the format of our agenda a little in an attempt to be more efficient, to have our meetings go a little more quickly, and to not spend time on things that are, to spend time on things that are more substantive and not on things that are less substantive. Specifically, two things. We always have 3 to 5 announcements. We've usually each taken a couple. In order to make that more efficient, we're going to try, let us know if you don't think it's working, to rotate the announcements. So each week, a different one of us will have all of the announcements. Jack pulled the short straw, so this week he has all of the announcements. So that's the first change. The second change is that we've added a consent agenda, which is very common in meetings, and it will, today it has things in it like a liquor license, a donation, and approval of minutes. It would have routine items that generally don't require a lot of discussion, that if possible would be grouped together and acted on together. For this board and for anyone else, if there's anything ever in the consent agenda that any one of us thinks should be pulled out and discussed separately, we certainly have the right to do that. Any one of us can make a motion to say, no, pull that one out, discuss it separately. Okay? So those are the two changes. We'll see if it makes any difference. But we'll put Jack on the spot first off, and he has a page full of announcements.
2, 3, and 4. Any questions?
Well, we put
This is
them
the
on
way
one
consent
page
agendas
for you.
are. Everyone has most sophisticated organizations have
So
consent
we
agendas.
decided to be
Any
sophisticated.
trustee, or in this case, a selectman who wishes to pull it out of the consent agenda, as you just said or inferred a minute ago, has the right to do so, just like they would in corporate America.
Yeah.
So here we go. The annual Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day for all Wenham and Hamilton residents will be held Saturday, September 22nd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. by the Hamilton DPW, 577 Bay Road. Please visit the DPW page on our website for a complete list of accepted items and fees. Checks made payable to the town of Hamilton will be cashed immediately. No, will be the only form of payment accepted. You may contact the Hamilton Town Hall with questions. So this is an annual two-town event, right? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I'll have to look and see what's...
Jack, might I ask what happened to number 1?
I was told not to read it, John, because Peter can explain that the people had to have already signed up by now.
Oh.
Yeah, so
And if I
the,
read it and people hurried to sign up, they would have been ineligible.
Okay.
I thought there was a good reason to skip over it, but
Sure.
anyway. This is hazardous waste. I'll have to see what hazardous waste comprise. I know you can go to the town clerk and say, okay, I got a computer or a laptop or something that can't be thrown out, and she assesses you a fine of something to $10 to $25, and then you can bring it to the DPW. But this is hazardous waste.
yeah, so we do, even though we've changed the format of the announcements, we do still have all of the backup materials relative to each of the announcements. So in the packet that's available online on the town's website, there is all of the detail about exactly what those hazardous materials are, what's eligible, what's
Right.
not, and so forth.
Okay, bring your sulfuric acid and everything else. Okay. What's that?
Someone's phone or a
Commentary.
duck.
I thought someone was making fun of my announcement.
Like that announcement, I guess.
The ducks are unhappy.
That's a pretty good ringtone. Okay, moving right along. Jack.
Effective August 28th, the water ban in the town of Wenham has been relaxed to again allow the use of sprinklers between the hours of 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. Great. And that although conservation is always necessary and encouraged, the increased water level in the Ipswich River allows us, that is the board, not that board, the water board, to relax the ban in accordance with our water conservation bylaw seasonal restrictions. Seasonal restrictions remain in place which mandates that no sprinklers are allowed between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Hand watering only is allowed during those hours. Mandatory water conservation restrictions are in effect from May 1 to September 30th and include private wells. We would like to thank all residents for their understanding and continued cooperation. So, Peter, you know what I'm about to ask you. And that, so how many people have we fined for not going along with these things?
So, because we relaxed the restrictions, there were somewhere between 12 and 15 warning letters that were sent out initially. And there was definitely heightened scrutiny regarding enforcement, specifically from the midnight shift police department, for those particular residents that had received a notice, but there were no violations before the ban was downgraded.
You mean there was no second warning letters?
Correct. Well, there wouldn't have been a second warning letter. They would have been
Well,
fined.
fine, so we haven't actually issued any fines.
That's correct.
So do you think that those warning letters generated compliance, in your opinion? Or
So,
just the police had other things to do during the midnight?
no, I think that generally the feedback that I heard was that they were effective,
That's good.
which is the intent.
The goal, right?
Yeah, we want to, if we're all half the hurting on that and have our lawns turn brown, you. Last week, residents aged 50 plus were mailed a postcard invitation to participate in the Wenham Connects Age-Friendly Survey. The survey may be accessed on our website via the homepage and Council on Aging page. Hard copies of the survey are available at the Council on Aging, Hamilton Wenham Public Library, and at the Wenham Town Hall. Survey results will be compiled and used to aid in our initiative to make Wenham more of an age and dementia-friendly town. Please contact Jen Flynn at the Council of Aging, 978-468-5529, with any questions or to have the survey delivered to you.
Oh, that's nice. They really want people to fill out the survey. They're delivering them. Nice.
Well, Jen only works Friday afternoons and Wednesday mornings, so no one can.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen is accepting letters of interest for the openings on the following appointed boards and committees. The CPC, or Community Preservation Committee, a very important committee. Conservation Committee, these are all important, actually. Council on Aging, Education Fund Committee, Elderly and Disabled Relief Fund, Hamilton Wenham Community Access Media, Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council. I didn't know there was a Mothers Club. I saw it float in the Mothers Club.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
very active right now.
Very active.
Wow, it's very active. There's a lot of mothers in that float.
There are a lot of mothers of young children in town, despite what we're seeing in enrollment in the schools. I just don't think they've hit yet. This is a very active group of people.
Could I make an announcement that the CPC will be meeting on October 10th? And if there is anyone out there who's even thinking they might like to apply, they might like to attend that meeting.
Okay, hopefully they've heard that. It'll be in the minutes, and I'm sure Lucy will have that in the front page of the Chronicle. Going on Open Space and Recreation Committee, Iron Rail Commission, Scholarship Fund Committee, Veterans Committee. I didn't know we were lacking somebody in the Veterans Committee. I thought we had a full committee. Anyway.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. The Wish Committee, maybe one of us has to get off.
Somebody's turning.
Zoning Board of Appeals. And I thought the Zoning Board of Appeals also was full.
That's an associate position, I think.
We already have, well, I have two associates. This will be the third associate then.
Yes.
So it's an associate position. I think we should be more specific in the future, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want somebody to apply to find out there's already 5 people there and you'd be the 6th.
Yeah.
You know, you're 2 people behind the other alternates.
Well, it's important. I think it does give a little, well, actually, you know what, it probably gives information here.
Well, but this is a
But
consent
it's
agenda
probably-
announcement. People aren't
Well,
going to
it's
listen to it.
probably on the website,
Yeah, but you have to go
the
to it.
website.
All right, please visit the Volunteer
associate
Opportunities page on our website for more information about the number of vacancies and committee descriptions. Letter of interest may be directed to the Board of Selectmen at nroebuck, R-O-E-B-U-C-K, at wenhammass.gov. That's WENHAMMA.gov. Let me do that again. nroebuck, ampersand, WENHAMMA.gov. Please contact the Town Administrator's Office at 5520 Extension 2 with any questions. Peter will be available most of the time, but not right now. And,
Yeah, and actually, the next item on the agenda is his report. Since he stepped out of the room, I will take an opportunity to give it just a small point in the chairman's report, thanking not only Peter and Nikki, but a young woman named Lara, for helping us rejuvenate the town seal. I don't know if people, it's a little, was a little bit of a pet project of mine and my daughter's, who is a historic preservationist. This town seal, over time, from 1890,
Yeah.
was copied and copied and copied and copied, and had become something that didn't look anything like the original.
Yep.
So with a little help, we did some research, and with this graphic design student's help, have actually recreated, to the extent that we can, digitally, the original seal.
That takes a lot of work to do.
She did a lot of work. She
Familiar
was
with that process.
easy to work with. She was great. Nikki was very helpful. But it reminded me, because what we saw on the float that was in the parade,
Yeah.
and what we're now seeing, thankful, I'm happy to see on our documents, is the, it's not really a new seal, it's a new rejuvenation, a preservation of the old seal.
Many generations past.
Yeah, so I was excited to be a part of that, and I think it looks great, and I think it looks a lot more like what it was intended to look like when our town clerk at that time, I wish I could remember the date, a long
Yeah,
time ago.
it's clean and it's crisp.
Right, and
That's really what you want.
yeah.
Clean and crisp.
So I think there'll be a process of, replacing all of the old seals with the new seals as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
It's a great report, Peter.
Yeah, I pinched hit with a chairman's report about the seal, which I was so happy to see
Great brief.
on all of these, in hopes that you'd be back in time to do a town administrator's
And
report.
here I am.
Perfect timing.
Yes. All right, several updates to give you, because it's been 3 weeks now, I think, since the board last met. So on the personnel front, Karen Moulton is going to be leaving the finance office at the end of the month, and so we posted her position, the finance assistant and payroll coordinator, the end of August. The deadline for submissions is next Monday, the 17th, and we expect to interview candidates hopefully that third week of September, but certainly at the latest, the last week. Positions budgeted, it's part-time, but a regular part-time, so not quite town hall hours. At 30 hours a week, pay range is just over $21 an hour to just over $26 an hour. Obviously, the goal is to fill the position as soon as possible, certainly in October. And we've worked out some interim coverage with some folks who work in town hall that should be able to get us through the transition period.
Karen will be missed. She was a friendly face, a knowledgeable face, and was always there to be helpful, and that we're going to miss her.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Agreed.
pleasant.
Yeah, completely agree. She did an outstanding job and was a big part of everything the finance office did and the culture here in town hall.
And we appreciate her staying to the end, agreeing to stay to the end of this month to give us a little more time to transition.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big help. Also, in terms of personnel, the police department posted 2 full-time officer positions at the end of July. The submissions were due the end of August, 30 days later. We had 6 internal candidates, that means reserve police officers, apply for those 2 positions. We will be conducting interviews the third or fourth week of September. And then we should have recommendations back to the board for appointments to fill those 2 positions the beginning part of October.
Question, when you say internal and then you say reserve, reserves usually are folks from the outside.
Yeah, so that's why I was trying to clarify. So they're internal, obviously there's no other officers.
We're familiar with them because they've served as reserves.
Correct.
I see.
So I use that term a little loosely in the sense that they, they've worked for the department for varying periods of time.
Okay.
But they are known to the department, and that was how we put the position out there, was to start there.
Yeah, that's consistent with what my nephew did. Reserve up here in Manchester or somewhere, and then went to Bourne and became a pledge officer because they needed.
Yep, and we've seen some success in following that process. So we're working through that and obviously trying to fill both of those positions as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
A couple other things to touch on. One, we talked about at our last meeting, and Wynn Dodge touched on it a little bit earlier tonight. Just talking about the street tree removals. So the tree warden held public hearings on August 3rd, and then jointly with the planning board on September 6th regarding over 50 proposed tree removals that we have slated across town. So with the exception of one tree, the birch tree, just over my shoulder here on the lawn of Town Hall, all of the other removals are expected to be completed in the next few weeks. And we also have, since our last meeting, received a list of proposed tree planting locations to spend down that $10,000 that was allocated in the RFT that FinCom approved in June. So those plantings, approximately half of them will take place this fall, and then the rest of them will be completed in the spring. And there are, when you look at that list, a good number of them that will be replacing trees that are being removed on Perkins and Larch and so forth. So that is the latest on that. Paving work. Because of the streets that we're going to be talking about, you can see while there was some delay in terms of the timing of this work, we are going to be doing an overlay, so grind and overlay of Pleasant Street and Meridian Road as part of our annual program. The grinding is going to take place Friday, September 21st, and then both of those roads will then be repaved the following week. It's all weather permitting, obviously, but that's generally the schedule for those two roads. And obviously with Pleasant Pond being open in summer to residents, we wanted to make sure to hold off till we got on the other side of Labor Day to do that paving work, so we wouldn't inconvenience folks there. We completed a town-wide pavement inspection program earlier this spring, and both of those roads were top of the list in terms of their need to be repaved. And so that was part of the criteria that we used in prioritizing that work. And now that we've circled in on the timeline, residents are going to be receiving notice in the next few days, really, just giving them the outline of the schedule for the paving. And just at a high level, we used just over $125,000 in Chapter 90 funds for this work, which leaves us a balance just over $75,000, and we receive $150,000 and change annually from the state. So we're not drawing down completely. We should start next year in about the same position we started this year, which is just over $200,000 to continue to do the paving work that's needed around town. The other paving work that we're going to be doing is over at the Iron Rail property. Town meeting approved issuance of up to $245,000 in debt for paving and roof work there. They approved that this spring. And those payments will be made from the Iron Rail Rental Revolving Fund that was approved by town meeting 2 years ago now, which essentially sets aside $25,000 of their rental income into that account for this exact purpose, to continue to make progress on their capital needs. And so that the access road from Grapevine around the backside of the brick building, where the Dodge Memorial is located, will be repaved. The parking lot behind the brick building will be finish paved, which has actually never been the case. And that was all part of the plan going into this year. That's been a priority that the Iron Rail Commission identified. And so that work's going to be done while the paving company is in town doing the rest of the paving.
That's great.
Yep.
Two other updates. The first is information that has been on the town webpage for the past few weeks now. We were notified just before Labor Day weekend that we had one positive mosquito test for the West Nile virus out actually at the Iron Rail property. That's where the traps are located. we then subsequently had another positive test this past week. So the Board of Health is going to be meeting actually tomorrow morning with representatives from Northeast Mosquito Control to determine next steps, and that includes additional outreach and education to residents and potentially spraying. Although the Board of Health's policy has traditionally been not to spray, but that is not necessarily tied to having a positive test. It's more of a general position that they've taken. And there have been statewide over 500 positive West Nile virus results. So the whole state is in a moderate risk. We're not here in Wenham in any more elevated than the rest of the state. And we have been coordinating with the school district's administration relative to that information.
To that, is West Nile, I've forgotten what it's called, but a reportable illness? Do doctors have to report to the town's Board of Health if they've diagnosed someone with West Nile?
That is my understanding. I believe there have been now 11 human cases reported across the state. And I don't think that is just, I think that's self-reported for exactly how you laid out.
Right, okay.
You could still go to a doctor with that, and unless you have a blood test, he wouldn't know, or she wouldn't know either.
No, I just
Yeah.
have heard of a couple of people now who think that they might have, and I just didn't know if it was something that was tracked by town or by anywhere else. There are some illnesses I know.
Yeah.
Or I didn't know if West
Foodborne
Nile
and
was
the
one
like.
of them.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then the last piece is Enon 1. It will be long-awaited return to the town on the weekend of September 22nd. Again, all weather dependent. And at this point, it's been up in Newbury with the American Hand Fire Society. I had to look up what the name of the organization was. But it's been the better part of a decade since we started site work.
I've forgotten how long it's been, but I remember when it left.
Right. So we are planning on having a formal ribbon cutting ceremony on Saturday, October 13th. That is the last day of Fire Prevention Week. And so more details to follow.
That is great.
We're wrapping up. You can see some progress, some good progress has been made for the new facility up the top of the hill behind Town Hall.
Yeah, you've got the footings in and backfilled. And then what's there, a platform that's going to go on top of that?
Well, no, the shed's up there.
Oh, I mean, the shed is there, but, oh, yeah, that's right. How do you get it into it? It looks like it's quite a steep.
Yeah, so they're actually bringing it on our trailer. We had originally talked about it potentially a temporary ramp, but I think they're going to be able to get it in just with the trailer that they normally transport it with, and a little assistance from the fire department. We're going to have all hands on deck on that day to make sure that it's a...
That's how it used to get hauled around anyways, was by hand, so.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
exciting.
yes, yeah, very exciting.
And
And there'll be some finished site work that's done up there and interpretive signage and the like. But good news on that front too.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Another question for you, Peter.
Sure.
As everyone knows who turns on the news, it's hurricane season, and that Florence is going to be devastating the Carolinas and maybe Virginia. So I also saw on TV today there were two other hurricanes, two other disturbances out in the Atlantic, trailing behind it. I think that, aren't we missing, we're meeting next week, right? Is it the FinCom?
Joint FinCom, and we
Yeah.
have our own meeting.
Yeah, I just think it would be helpful to dust off what our emergency procedures would be in the town if we felt that, and we were warned, not felt, we were warned that there would be a significant tropical storm or hurricane hitting our area. You know, what would be the advice we would give? I'm listening to the governors and President Trump and everybody else giving advice to people. So I think we should dust off, okay, if you feel unsafe in your home, what you should do. I think is it the Buca School is one of the shelters? And what other shelters, when will we give warning? What should residents be stocking up on, you know, fresh water? I learned the other day that whatever water you have in your house that's stockpiled should be less than 6 months old. I didn't realize that water had an expiration date, but apparently has some, so anyway, just, dusting it off. We haven't had one in a while, and that, so what kind of a command center would be set up?
You're talking about specific to a hurricane?
Specific to a hurricane.
Because we obviously deal with nor'easter most of the time, and frankly, that's the much more likely and frequent issue that we have relative to.
It is,
so, yeah.
but some of the northeasters probably wouldn't have the same devastating effect of a hurricane, possibly, and that I'm just suggesting.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up, Jack, because coincidentally, because we were at the firehouse this morning, I found out we no longer have the ability to power up the Buca School with a generator.
We never did.
Yes, we did.
Well,
We used to.
not in an exceedingly long time. Because the notion of buying a generator for Bucher School, and whether it was a school purchase or a town purchase, has gone back, precedes me on the FinCom.
Might have preceded Al Dodge.
Well, no, so there, one of the items in the proposed schools capital plan, and I'm not going to remember exactly which article it was on the warrant.
The debt exclusion, yeah.
Yeah, the debt exclusion. One of those discrete projects within that larger bucket was exactly that. Was full funding to
Put on site, I guess?
correct to have an
Okay,
on-site generator.
And that would make a whole lot more sense. We had a trailered generator that was supposed to be pulled over there in the event of, we needed a warm building for residents who are now
Right.
2 or 3 or 4 days without heat.
So that's what you're saying we no longer have?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we have no ability to even get, yeah.
But I know that
That's news to me, John, so thank you for that.
Okay.
apparently that they've stockpiled lots of non-perishable, relatively speaking, food supplies over there, and that
Yep.
apparently they're high in salt content, but you may die from,
They'd rather have salty food than no
have a heart
food.
attack, but nevertheless.
Starve a heart attack.
And I remember a few years ago, that when they were inventorying it, some of this stuff was quite old and they got rid of it. And so, I mean, we're kind of a stock, whatever we've got that would probably parallel preparations for a severe nor'easter, except we don't have to worry about, plowing the streets and so forth, but there's a different issues when you have floods. You don't have a flood usually with a nor'easter, but if you had 30 inches of rain falling in within a 48-hour period like they're going to have down south, we're in terrible shape. Just anyway, I don't want to go on and on.
Yeah, and I will say there's actually a much broader conversation that I think we need to have about emergency management and the amount of manpower and funding that we put into it generally. And it's been in a bit of a holding pattern with the transition in the fire chief position over the past year. And so that's gladly something that we
Yeah,
can
because it was
talk about putting on.
both of our chiefs and DPW that were very instrumental in making sure that we had our emergency preparedness plans, conversations, and I don't know.
Yep, and I will say that the Mary Beth Ting, public health nurse, and Jackie have been meeting with representatives from the fire and police department over the past several months relative to our emergency management plan and making sure that it's updated and accurate and so forth. So
Maybe-
it's a much larger topic, I think, that warrants conversation.
Yeah, but if we're going to have a hurricane, it's probably going to be the next 6 weeks, 6 or 8 weeks, if we're going to have one. And so that, maybe we can just dust off, what are we prepared to, how are we prepared to help the citizens of this town, either through shelters or whatever, I don't know, and that, or advising them that there were evacuation routes. I don't know, I don't think we've ever done that, but I don't know, just to dust off what we've.
A lot of that comes from MEMA. I mean, the state agency that handles that, we take the lead from them on evacuation routes and PSAs and the like in terms of getting information out to residents, advising them on how to prepare and so forth.
Maybe
Anyway.
they have some kind of a generalized document that they could provide to us just for general information.
Someone says, "Come get batteries, fill up water, get several days supply of this, that, and the
Personal
other thing."
responsibilities, Jack. You said that earlier, and that's a very important point. We should not rely on the town or the state or the feds completely. We should have our own backup plans.
or something. I mean, we should, anyway, so that, I'm not talking about a 9-month process. You may have another emergency management thing we have to go over, but this is more immediate.
Yep,
Okay.
I understand.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Peter? If not, so the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'll just read again an introduction so we all understand. Everyone understands what we're doing. In an effort to expeditiously address relatively routine items that may not require extensive deliberation, we've added a consent agenda. Generally speaking, all items will be voted on in a single motion. If discussion is on a particular matter is desired, a member of the board may make a motion to remove that item from the consent agenda, and then it will be addressed excuse me, before we begin in new business. Tonight, just to read what they are, the consent agenda includes 3 items. One is a one-day liquor license for the Wenham Museum Golf Tournament. The second is acceptance of the 375th anniversary donations. And the third is approval of minutes of 4 open session meetings and 3 executive session meetings. So, presuming everyone has seen what they are, I will make a motion to approve items A through C in the consent agenda as presented with the executive session meeting minutes from August 7th and August 21st to be held until further notice.
Second.
I do have a question on the monies for the 375. Approximately how much is involved there?
$925, which is for merchandise that's been purchased.
Oh, that goes for the merchandise, and then,
Correct.
is this money coming in from the sale of merchandise?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not just a
So we have to
straight
accept it.
donation, it's a purchase of.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, we will vote on this. All in favor of approving this consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay, we can move on then to new business. We have a few appointments first, and Jack, I think you have those?
I do. Okay, first we have 2 appointments, one to the Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council. Who knows what they do?
All those
They-
interesting pieces of art around town?
Well, they also, I think, have primary responsibility only because, I know this only because organizations I am a part of receive them. They receive applications for grants for cultural activities.
Like
and,
what?
For instance, the Chorus North Shore, which is, we don't typically get something from Hamilton, but since we have a lot of presence in Ipswich, we applied to the Ipswich Cultural Council to help offset the costs of a particular concert or activity that we're doing.
Okay.
And I don't know how many they get in a year. These are not huge grants typically, several $100s, but I think that's a large part of what they do.
Okay. Well, if somebody wants to join it, and I move to appoint Lauren A. Consolazio, if I'm saying that correctly. Probably not.
Yeah.
To the Hamilton Wenham.
Jack.
And I'll take your
I'll buy it.
yeah, he'll buy it. To the Hamilton Wenham, oh, it's a 2-town cultural council, for a 3-year term beginning September 11th, today, and ending June 30th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. And so I have one more appointment. I think I do.
You do.
And that, oh yeah, no, yes. But I have to change the motion I have in front of me, but slightly. I move to appoint Monica C. Ford as treasurer collector for a term beginning,
No, it looks weird, but
It's a retroactive term.
August 4th and ending November 4th, 2018. Shouldn't I say subject to a successful contract negotiation?
So I'd actually, based on the conversation we had in executive session, I would change the end of the term to October 31st, 2018. And this is our interim treasurer collector that's filling in.
Oh,
Leslie left
yes.
on August 3rd.
Oh.
The new treasurer collector, hopefully, will be starting November 1. So this is just to bridge that gap for the purposes of reporting to the state and so forth.
But this is appointing Monica.
Correct. For
she's
the
the
time.
temporary person?
She's the interim
Yeah.
who's helping us.
She's from
Okay,
Ipswich, I
so-
think.
Winthrop.
So that's,
That's what she said.
what was it, August 4th, 2018, ending when?
October 31st.
Halloween.
Right. Ooh, that's a
Do I
Friday.
hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations to ourselves.
And now we have
Right, take it, you know,
unappointed
from
treasurer collector.
somewhere
That's
else.
always good. Next, under new business, we have an investment report, and this is one, Jack, where I am so happy that you will have, you have 150 pages here that I'm sure you can summarize in 3 minutes.
You bet your life.
No one better can have
Maybe
this.
less if you really
Okey
chat this.
dokey. I'm also going to modify our existing investment policy ad lib at the end of this, as consistent with what we discussed at the last meeting as well, in terms of where we can, how much we can put in local banks. Remember that? I'll describe it when I get to it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we have Bartholomew and Company is our outside investment advisor, manager. We had some major transitions in the past year. A year ago, we sat down and went through all of our policies to the extent they existed, revised them, and modernized them, I really should say. And fundamentally, we wanted to sweep cash in our multiple bank accounts into some interest earning or investment earning categories, and only keep enough cash in our bank accounts to meet our weekly, monthly needs. We also weren't permitted under the old investment guidelines to, for example, invest in common stock, well, we now are. And we didn't have any money market funds either. So a year ago, we had about $1,747,000 in so-called investable assets. That's grown not because of any
Yeah, that was
fantastic
amazing growth.
Yeah, it's now grown to a little over $4.9 million.
Oh, what a return.
And I want a little more in my salary for this and selectmen's. So that's basically not an investment return. That's basically taking monies that were not in investment earning assets and now putting them in investment earning assets and minimizing the amount of cash we have to fund the daily operations. And so of the $4.9 million, we have heavily invested in government bonds and corporate bonds. We have restricted our purchases of corporate bonds and, to BAA or higher. If it falls below that, we have to sell them. We have common stock. We had none before. Now we have almost $500,000. And so we're pleased that during this transitional period, we've organized our assets, we think, prudently and consistently with what a municipal agency town should be investing in. Being conservative, we don't have any what they call alternative assets, pork bellies, gold in China, anything else like that, or gold anywhere, really. And that, so this is a work in progress. And one of the things we noticed during our annual report by our investment advisors is that we had restricted, just like you would, presumably, our money in local banks or any banks to the FDIC insurable amount, which is $250,000 per person. If you're an individual, not a town, you could, if you're married, you could do $500,000. But I thought that some of the monies we're earning in mutual funds would be less than what some of the more well-capitalized banks locally are basically paying. For example, Institute for Savings, this is not a commercial for them. We could be earning 2.25%, on balances above $250,000. And I think that we should make an exception to our $250,000 policy for local banks to two large local commercial banks that are highly capitalized, which would be the Institute for Savings and Salem 5. They have very, very strong balance sheets. They're quite profitable, and it's not like they're out in Indiana or Sacramento, California. We get quarterly reports. I do personally, quarterly reports on how they're doing, and I can assure you they're doing well. So there's no sense in us trying to fight for 1.5%, 1.75% outside of that, and I think that that would be, I think, my proposal to make an exception to our existing policy, just for those two for now. Beyond that, I'm happy with what we've accomplished, and that I think that like any portfolio, it should be dynamic, and that we should be reviewing probably at least semi-annually our asset allocations as well as permitted assets. And that, but I'm also happy with Bartholomew's guidance to Peter and I, and that we had a fruitful meeting. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think actually what we agreed was that there would be quarterly reports. And this was the second quarterly report. It was the year-end report. But obviously with the transition in the finance director, there was a little bit of a delay.
I wasn't referring to their quarterly reports to us. I was referring to our semi-annual review of our investment guidelines and so forth. Yeah.
Yep.
And so that we don't have to do it quarterly, but I think that's a little too frequent. Annually is probably not enough. I think semi-annually strikes the right balance in terms of, for example, the modification I'm just suggesting we do now.
So I'm glad to hear you say that about Bartholomew, because I believe at the beginning, when we started this process, you weren't sure you were going to be as comfortable.
I was sure I didn't like them in the beginning.
Okay, I was trying to be nice. But, so it's
But they
good to
recovered.
hear. It's good to hear that now, after working with them for a while and seeing what they do and reacting with them and interacting, that you've changed your mind. It's comforting.
We come to an understanding about, we're not country bumpkins here, and we know a little bit what we're talking about, and so that, they were, changed some of the personnel, and they gave a very professional report to Peter and I, and that led us through it, and they answered our questions satisfactorily, and that I thought that was, you have it right in there.
Yeah, but
A lot of stuff in there.
And the way the portfolio is set up is exactly in line with the, the min-max
allocations.
Allocations for each of those particular assets. And
Yeah, so, I mean, bottom line, we're in very, very safe assets with highly rated, and we have a modest amount in common stocks.
Great.
That's my report. Any questions, John or Catherine?
Sounds good.
I did have a quick
Want a tip?
question. Yeah, no, that's okay.
Sell.
I know, well, no comment. Oh gosh, it slipped my mind. Okay, I'm sure it wasn't important. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I just remembered. So you proposed a change in our policies, and I think Peter heard that. So in order for that to enact, if that's literally a change in policy, we have to change a policy and revote new policies.
Right, so I will put together a draft, work with Jack, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting or two with a formal change to the policy.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, makes sense. We
Okay, good.
spent so many years doing things sort of casually without memorializing them. Now that we have policies and we're making a reasonable change, let's actually put them in the policy.
Great.
That's one of the things that, we're
That's what I
going
was
through the
trying to
audit
do.
now, that's one of the things the auditors are going to be looking for, to make sure that we're following it and, that any
That'd be
changes are
sad.
made.
And we
Then
had
we have one.
to remind Bartholomew what our policies are as well, because one of the bonds was a little late on
Yes.
their credit rating, and so that they fixed that immediately after I pointed it out to them.
Yeah, so it works for all of
Although they were
us.
still within the window, because I think they have 90 days to change.
They were skating a little there.
They were, yes, okay, Peter, yes, they were. I'm not sure they
In all
realized there was a window.
They might not have. They just maybe have been lucky.
Well, it's hard to, we get pages and pages of investment policies, and so
Right.
that,
We do.
it's just modest account.
Okay, so if we're done with that, we'll move on. This should be none of this should be new information. This is a review of our goals from our annual retreat. They're in our book. I'll just highlight a few of them. And the only purpose of having this, in my understanding, on the agenda tonight is so that we all agree that this is what we agreed, and that we refresh our memories about what we thought the most urgent, highest priority goals were. So there was, was it last month, I guess, that we had our,
It was a full month ago.
a month ago, and Peter's put together a memo, but I think everyone will remember
Yeah.
the three highest priorities that we had for the next 2 fiscal years. And remember, we decided that we would take a longer view of it, since many of these things take a little longer. So assess the results of the fire-based BLS EMS pilot program, and the viability of adopting permanent service model changes was on that list of 3. evaluate regional dispatch service options based on results of feasibility study and select a preferred partner, develop and implement transition improvement plans, and the third one was to work with the Open Space and Recreation Committee to implement priority year 1 and 2 recommendations of the new plan and determine, if any, there's the role of the Economic Development Committee.
So Peter described this in an email a couple of weeks ago to all three of us, right?
Right. And this is our opportunity to say this out loud to each other and to say out loud to each other that, yeah, this is the way we remember.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was
Aye,
also,
matey.
obviously, the retreat isn't broadcast, and so the idea
Right.
here was that we had a conversation, came out of that with a summary memo, and just wanted to make sure that all the feedback from the board was consistent with my understanding of what we all agreed to as part of that conversation.
And I'll just briefly highlight, we all agreed that there were many, many, many operational priorities and that, or operational goals, and that they weren't going to all be top priority. So we did at that time identify several, one of them in the category of the annual town meeting, and I think we already have a date set to review this, but to refine annual town meeting preparation and outreach to improve attendance, participation, outcomes. To work with the MassDOT to design and install a traffic signal in downtown corridor on Main Street. To complete the Longfellow Road and South Street repair project and implement betterment programs. I believe we're still waiting for legislative approval of the home rule petition on that.
Oh, I was about to ask, we haven't heard anything. in a
No,
while,
and that's something we're still
it's
working with
Sitting
legal.
in Boston.
Yep.
Yep. And they
But
know
the
that
good
we're
news
looking for it.
is that they can approve home rule petitions outside of the full legislative session, so
Oh,
that
good.
the fact that they have adjourned for the year does not mean that the home rule petition won't be acted on between now and January,
Okay.
when the next session
And
starts.
we have commitment from, verbal commitment anyway, from Brad and Bruce that they'll usher this through and be sure that it gets through. They understand our timeline. Successfully manage the transition of new shared inspectional service program and refine as necessary. We've started that already. Support and monitor new fire chief's professional development and assess long-term viability of his continued leadership role. My personal favorite, continue to improve resident engagement, including developing and distributing town-wide survey and incorporating results into town's outreach efforts, as well as assessing need for proposing zoning bylaw changes that reflect community sign policy. God, I said those words, sign policy. So
Back on there.
those are the highlighted goals. Everyone still thinks they are. And for anyone who's interested in seeing the entire document, it is or will be
Is
on the website.
It should already be up. Yep.
Okay, so that's,
I noticed on here, there's a note on the garden club completion of their project. I can't believe how much work they did on it over the last week or so, because it was an absolute mess over there. 2 weeks ago, when I surveyed the trees that we were talking about taking some down, and when I went in there Saturday, I thought, holy mackerel, somebody's been busy.
you have a party and,
Nothing like a deadline to make things
have a party and
And I
things
will
get
say
cleaned up.
that, and Heather Kent, the president of the Garden Club,
Yep.
said to me again when I saw her on Saturday, very appreciative for the excellent work and considerable hours and effort that the DPW has put into doing the site work there. They've done a great job, and the Garden Club, I know, is really appreciative, and they plan to start planting in the next 2 weeks.
right.
So that they can take
She
advantage of the fall
connected with
season.
the Scoutmaster and one of my Eagle Scout candidates to see if they can get an Eagle Scout project to help them
Oh, great.
along the way.
You're saying she did connect?
She did
Oh,
Saturday,
great.
yeah.
Great.
Everybody in town was in the same
That was
place.
so great. There were so many
connect
opportunities for
people.
networking there. Yeah, so,
Wow, it's great.
yeah, that's one of them.
Look good in
anyways.
that picture, John, that car, you know, that was circulated by.
Yeah, we were
Jack.
wondering what happened to you. I think we bumped you out of the car or something.
I know you
No,
didn't, John.
you chose to walk.
That's correct. That's right.
And it was a good choice, actually. After a while, I agreed with you and
Yeah.
walked myself.
I have people say, where is that woman selectman?
Yeah, well, I won't get into the fact that I'm a little height challenged, and the car was a little height
John was
challenged.
clearly visible. You were a little less
I
visible in
know.
that photo.
So, yeah. Anyway, it was a great parade.
It was.
thankfully. So, the next thing that we have on the agenda, just a few items left, and this is your agenda item, Jack. I think Peter may be willing to help you, but it's the Finance Office Transition Plan,
Of course.
which we referred to briefly, but
Yep. Let me read the motion. Oh, wait a minute.
Wouldn't be any motion for the,
yeah, it's just, is it just a review?
just to review and update.
Peter, why don't you take it? What?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
board interviewed Patty Moore at your last meeting on August 21st. At the time, the board, after the interview and after some discussion, extended a conditional offer of employment to Patty to serve as the next finance director. There were 3 conditions on that offer of employment: successful contract negotiations, background check, and a transition plan for the finance office. And so over the past few weeks, I have worked to make sure that there is ample support to ensure that the finance office will have the coverage it needs, and that Patty will have the training that she needs to onboard successfully. And a key piece of that, Monica Ford, who was officially appointed as the treasurer collector earlier tonight, will continue on in that role. It's very part-time, 1 or 2 days a week, and they're not full days in the finance office, basically just making sure that all of the minimum requirements and job functions of the treasurer collector position are fulfilled. And she'll continue on in that role until October. I was able to connect with Don Carter, who is a very recently retired treasurer collector who worked for the better part of 15 years in that role in the municipal world. The first half dozen or so in Ipswich as the assistant treasurer collector, and then more recently as the Middleton treasurer collector, and retired in June. Lives in Hamilton, comes highly recommended, probably couldn't dial it up any better. I've met with him. He's met with Chris and Karen in the finance office, and he is ready, willing, and able to help out starting in October. He'll be meeting initially with Monica and Patty, and then we'll be really here on a more regular basis when Patty starts, presumably if contract negotiations are wrapped up in November. And then he will be here to help train Patty on the systems and on the job function. Again, she's never been in that primary treasurer collector role in Massachusetts, and so that's where the training needs to be focused. There are other training sessions available from the DOR, from the obviously the statewide association, the Collector Treasurers Association. Unfortunately, their certificate program runs in the summer months, so it'll be some time before Patty will be able to take advantage of that. But that's essentially what the plan is at this point. And everybody in the finance office has been looped in to how we see that playing out. And again, even though initially the focus obviously is completing all of the work that needs to get done on the treasurer collector side, Patty would be involved in the budget process, and as I mentioned earlier, the hiring process for the finance assistant payroll coordinator position. Any questions?
Thank you for doing that. That was a lot to come together in a short period of time, and a little luck and a little good advice, and I think a lot of time on the phone by you. So,
Agreed.
thank you for that. I'm feeling more comfortable that we're moving forward with an office that will function completely.
I think everybody is. That was a concern that
Sure.
that was, everybody had the same concern and wanted to make sure that it was done right, so that the coverage was there, and that nothing was missed, because it's an incredibly important function.
Yes. Okay, so I have no other matters in new business, so we can move to old business, which there is
We
only
have one old business
one
matter.
old old guy giving some old business.
It's really not that old business. It's only, what, a month or two since
We talked about this in June.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe the very beginning of
I
July.
feel like we've been talking about
Yeah.
this a long time.
that long ago?
It was?
But it is the discussion of potential installation of a cell tower, or actually an RFP for a cell tower.
Correct.
At the Iron Rail.
Well, I'd like to comment that not only have I been a strong proponent to this concept, but I finally was about to give up completely until our great Jim Romano, chairman of the Iron Rail Commission, came to a meeting here in July, you said, and proposed the installation of a cell tower on the Iron Rail property. I've been out to the spot and area, I'm very familiar with it. It seems very appropriate, and I do know that there's pretty poor signal in the east side of Wenham. In fact, I had someone who was here earlier comment to me yesterday when I called her how bad the reception was because I could hardly hear her. Anyways, so I think this is a great idea, and I strongly suggest that we pursue it further. There was just, I did not have time to read everything about this. Unfortunately, it's been all Wenham since Thursday for me, nonstop. But I did see a note in here, something to do with Gordon College.
So there's a tower at Gordon College. That was probably one of the, as part of their feasibility analyses, they looked at the existing sites and then where the gaps in coverage were. So there is an existing site at Gordon, but then generally the radius is about a mile or so, so it drops off well before the Iron Rail property in terms of, it's really that section along where 22.
The Gordon one drops off.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's where
So this would
all the feedback we've gotten from Blue Sky Tower is that there is ample need in terms of not having coverage in the radius right around the Iron Rail facility.
Yeah, and I
so
would
that it
think,
would be-
particularly where our DPW is there,
Yep.
along with, like you said, the whole east side of Wenham. I think it's a good thing. It's not going to help us in West Wenham, but why is not dilly-dally around? And I think we.
Absolutely.
My recommendation is to see that we push ahead with this and see what we can come up with.
Right.
And Catherine, you're still going to come out there with me
I did.
for a walk? You did walk out there?
I did walk out there.
All
I
right.
think I voiced in the past couple of meetings or whenever we talked about this, my really only concern with what I had read and seen was that is the largest and only large municipal property that we own, the town owns, and I was concerned that we might be, by putting in a cell tower there, we might be precluding some other potential use that we might have for that site in the future. But after walking around it and seeing where that site is and what's around that site, I'm convinced that we should at least do an RFP to understand, because I don't think we'd be infringing on any, if we needed to build something there in the future, I'm pretty sure structure, it would not be
really a
in-
buildable
in
site.
that spot. So
Much of anything. It's so
I
wet
did
and swampy.
eventually get a chance to see it, so.
Gives the Boy Scouts a place to camp out.
Well, there's a
Clear
it's
the
a-
beaver
it's-
dams
There's a
out.
lot of stuff there, but in some ways, having a cell tower and some construction there might cause some cleanup of that area generally around it. So it might have an unintended benefit. But so anyway,
Just so you know, it gets extremely wet in there. Where their site is
Oh, yeah.
a little bit high, but all the rest of that area is just
yeah, I could
heavy wetlands.
just from the mud on my shoes could tell you that was the case. So
All right.
ready for your motion if you want to make it.
All right. I authorize. Okay.
Whatchamacallit?
I authorize the town administrator to work. Yeah, what's his name?
That guy.
To work with the Iron Rail Commission and planning coordinator to draft a request for proposal to site a cell tower on the Iron Rail property as outlined in the supporting documentation, provided that the Board of Selectmen approve any such solicitation prior to its issuance.
For a second on that?
Second.
Any further questions?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Nice.
And that, I believe, gentlemen, unless you have something else you would like to discuss tonight that is appropriate for something that's not on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Right.
Covered a lot tonight.
I have one suggestion.
Yes.
Minor suggestion for the consent agenda that